In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these neat little wooden maple leaves. They make a great project for Canada Day, or anytime really. Let's do it. Hey guys, it's David here from David's DIY Reviews. On this channel we do a lot of tool reviews, tool how-to videos, and neat little seasonal, wood projects like this, and just DIY projects in general. Stuff for the kids, stuff for the family, stuff just for you. Today, I'm going to show you how to make these neat little wooden maple leaves. So let's get into it. So how I actually went about getting a nice, perfect, symmetrical leaf is I actually thought to just trace this off my computer screen, and that's exactly what I did. I just put a piece of paper on my screen and trace this out. The next thing I want to do is just go ahead and cut this out so that I can trace it onto my piece of wood. I'm actually going to use poplar for this, which I know isn't the best material for this type of work, but it's what I have, and it's what I'm going to use. So go ahead and get yourself a leaf drawn out, draw it on a piece of paper, and cut it out. So you just go ahead and finish up cutting out your leaf, and then we'll go ahead and put that onto our piece of wood. And yes, I've got pink scissors. I've got 2 kids, and my scissors are pink. That's just the way it is. So when you think about tracing your leaf on your piece of wood, leave some room on the bottom or on the edges to clamp it in a vise, or clamp it wherever it is that you're going to clamp it. So I'm just going to go ahead and trace this. It doesn't have to be perfect, because you're going to cut this and you're going to sand it and do whatever you got to do to make it look as good as you want it to look. But just make sure you do leave some places to clamp it in place when you begin to cut. And I'm just finishing up tracing this leaf onto my piece of wood. And like I say, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just a guideline to follow with your saw. And remember too, when you're cutting this out with your saw, you don't want to cut undersized. If anything, you want to cut a little oversized. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Because if you start cutting undersized, it's going to get small, it's going to get too weak, and it's not really going to look the way you want it to look. You can always bring it down. You can't make it bigger once you cut it. And like I said, there's a lot of neat things you can do with these. You could drill a hole in the middle and put a tea light in it. You could drill holes in it and make it like a pen holder. You could do anything you want. But I would really recommend, if you're going to do any drilling or any work to the inside of the leaf, I would do that before you cut the leaf out, because you're going to have something to hang on to. It's going to be easier to do that work and then cut the leaf out afterwards. So there's a couple ways you could go about cutting this out. You could clamp it in a vise like this and start making cuts down at it. Or, you could clamp it to a desk or your table like this and start cutting across. I'm probably going to do a little bit of both. I think I'm going to clamp it to my desk and do some cutting in from the sides, and then put it in the vise and do a little bit more finishing cutting. You're just going to want to be very careful when you initially start making your cuts to not break it or cut in too far or anything like that. So let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and start making some of these initial cuts. And you just want to, it's definitely, this is going to be a little bit of a tricky thing, but you know what, you start slowly, you work your way through all your cuts, and you'll find it's not too bad. Make sure your saw is straight up and down when you're meeting corners, and that's going to make sure that the leaf is, the angles are straight up and down throughout. And yeah, I'm aware this saw is kind of overkill for the job, but it's a really good, really sharp saw. It's probably the best one I have, so I tend to use it a lot. You may have noticed that if you've seen some of my other videos, but it does the job, it works well. You know what, for something like this, you want to use a tool you're familiar with, a saw that you can use really well, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you. And as you make your cuts, you just want to keep moving your wood around to make it in a good position to cut, and that's going to make it a lot easier as you work your way around the leaf. And earlier, what I meant by not cutting undersized, you want to be cutting just on the outside of the line, kind of removing the line. If you start cutting, on the line, your triangles of the leaf are going to get really small, and it's not going to look great at the end. And you just kind of keep cutting away at it, removing pieces, and don't get discouraged if it's a little rough to begin with. You'd be amazed what you can do, with a file, some coarse sandpaper, a finer saw at the end. Just keep cutting away at it and working your way you know, you'll be at the end. And you might find kind of as pieces break off, you get these little notches. You can kind of sometimes just take your saw like this, kind of hold the blade right near it and just kind of, you know, almost use it like, I don't even know what you'd call it exactly. You just kind of file those little pieces off with your saw blade, and that gets you, you know, kind of keeping it nice and neat. And when you're trying to cut into a line, you can kind of line your saw up, you know, with one eye closed to that line to bring your cut in. And also, I would probably wait to the end to cut the stem out, because that's definitely going to be the most breakable part. And if you're trying to clean up some of these edges as you go, you can take a saw with a finer tooth in it, and you can just kind of, like I was showing you earlier, kind of take the saw, and you can kind of work it like this. And it's a little unorthodox, but you'd be amazed how well it works to clean up those edges before you get to sanding. And the further you go, the more small cuts you make. You want to really try to support the pieces of the leaf and the break off pieces with your fingers to keep it from breaking in a way that you don't want it to. And I think at this point, I'm going to spend some time cleaning up some of these edges, because there's a lot more thickness and strength to the stem part, and I'm going to be a lot less apt to break it as I'm trying to clean it up. And I think now I'm going to go ahead and stick it in my vise, and you know, you can use a file, coarse sandpaper, whatever you've got to kind of even out some of these corners, make it look really nice, and you know, it'll be a little less sanding for later. And if you're finding that some of your points are kind of rounded off or not ideal, you can really kind of sharpen them up with some sandpaper. Just, you know, use the inside of your finger like this and sand right at the points, and you can really sharpen them up nicely. So I've been, you know, sanding away at this for about 20 minutes, and you know, you might have been thinking before it's looking a little rough, but you'd be amazed what, you know, you and some 80 grit sandpaper can do. It's starting to look pretty nice, and now we're going to go ahead and begin to cut the actual leaf out completely. So I've gone ahead and cut, you know, the bottom off, even with the bottom of the stem. That way, as you cut in these last two cuts per side, you're not going to have that whole piece hanging off, because it's probably going to break that off if you don't do it that way. And then I would probably make the two cuts up the stem while there's still some strength in the wood here, and then you can make your last two final cuts right there, and it's going to come off really nicely. So I'll go ahead and start that now. And you know what, guys, when you have it, the stem broke off. That's, you know, that's how woodworking goes sometimes, but I'm not mad at it. I kind of like the look of it like that. I'm going to clean it up, I'm going to paint it, maybe stain it, I don't know. I still like the look of it. You know, don't be mad if you break it. You know, you can cut into it some more, the stem breaks off, big deal. Still a cool piece. I'm going to finish sanding it up and show you guys how it looks. So like I said, guys, definitely spend some time with some sandpaper on this when you're done cutting. You'd be amazed how nicely this cleaned up. It was actually looking kind of rough. I was kind of getting down on it myself, but you know, you sand away at it for a while, some, you know, 80 grit, work your way down to some finer sandpaper. It's going to look really good. You know, I believe you guys can do it. I can do it. It's not that hard. It's a nice piece when you're done. You can use it like a coaster. You could drill a hole in it, like I said, put a tea light in it like a candle. You can sit a candle on it. It's a neat little piece to have on your table. You could put it on the wall, on a shelf. I really like these ones. I know you're going to like them too. Give it a try. Build your woodworking skills. It's David's DIY Reviews, weekly videos, Mondays, Wednesdays. Check back in for a lot more really great content. See you guys in the next video. Bye.